So reasons for using a recruiter. We help clients in many ways, and part of our role is to help them through the journey of defining the role, finding the right person, and resourcing that person. So when I speak to a client about their requirement, we like to talk and get to the bottom of what the business needs are, and help them define the role to make sure that they're looking and finding the right person for that role. So we're asking them about the skill set required, the approach to how the role would be worked, the model of the role, and the type of person that they are looking for and the experience that they need in this particular role. So that's one of the things that we do at the beginning. Many clients that we work with already have a role that's established, but we would also try and take them on a journey to make sure that they haven't missed out on any of the aspects of the role that they're recruiting for. So talking to the rest of the team, and as I said before, understanding the business needs and what the requirement of this role is. We see quite a lot of people using legacy, so they will dig out the old job description and start recruiting on the back of that. We really urge clients, and anybody that's recruiting really, to think about the role as it stands today and what the requirement of that role is today, rather than relying on old job descriptions and things that may have evolved since the original job description was written. So that's one of the things that we're going to do when we're going to speak to a new client. We also understand about the business when we go and speak to them, the culture of the business, the team, the ethos of the business, what their goals and needs are. So it's really good for us to understand that, and I think that's really important to translate in a job description too, if we can. And then we are going to talk about finding that person and where we might find that person, and for you to think about where you might find that person, so where you might advertise your role, who you might use to find that person. Quite often we try as much as we can to recruit the right person for the job without considering too many things like gender. We try and take all the bias out of the situation. I think it's quite interesting how things have evolved. We've got big organisations now taking all identity off CVs as part of their selection process. I think it will be interesting to watch how that progresses and moves forward. But our job as a recruiter is to find the person that you've designed and you've told us that you're looking for. And that has got nothing to do with anything but the requirement for the role and the skill set that's on offer. So when you're thinking about the selection process, I think it's really important for you to consider those parts and those parts only. It's very difficult sometimes to get it right. So one of our biggest words of advice to our clients is if you're not sure, run it past somebody else. Don't just leave it to one person. Have somebody else go over. For example, when you're using a recruiter, we might put forward 3 or 4 candidates that we think are perfect for the job. And as part of your selection process, you might want to run that past somebody else. So when you're doing it yourself, again, cross-referencing with the job description, making sure that you are truly recruiting for the job that's on offer rather than the personality, the person, their location, their gender, and all those other things. Try initially to recruit for the skill that's required and the job description that you're looking at. So yeah, I would always advise that you talk to somebody else first or run it past somebody else before you make that selection process yourself. Okay, so once you've got through that sort of process of selection and decided on the candidates that you might want to speak to, it's all about the interview. And one of the biggest frustrations for us is quite often when we've gone through our due diligence and finding and selecting the really good candidates that we think are suitable for the role for our clients, when it gets to the client, things can often go wrong. So when you're recruiting yourself, I think it's really important. This is the most important part of this whole process, is the interview process. So this is a really big investment for your business, so it's really important that you get this right. So often we see the wrong person doing the interview, not enough interviews going on, the style of interview that's conducted. So these are really important key parts that you need to think about before you get to that part of your process. So we think that to keep it to run a fair comparison with your candidates, have a set structure of questions that are asked. So you can really reflect and compare each candidate on their own merits based on those set structured questions. After that, quite often we will ask or advise clients to think about competency-based questions, so evidencing the skill set, evidencing their experience, giving you general chit-chat examples, and then we would encourage you to think about behavioural questions. So this gives you an insight into the personality of the person and gives you a clear insight into the beginning of the cultural fit side. But at the beginning of the process, we would definitely suggest that you start with a structured set of questions to do your first initial inquiry. And then don't leave it there. I mean, we are always encouraged, if you're not going to do a one-on-one interview, that you have somebody else in the room who's going to be interpreting the answers of the candidate as well. Don't be fearful about writing down answers either. Obviously, make sure you advise the candidate of the way the structure of the interview is going to go, and that you may be making notes. I would hope that the candidate is also making notes as well as they go along with the interview. And then revisit the candidate after the initial interview. We always use the analogy that if you're buying a house, you would never go and visit a house first time and then make the purchase. You always revisit, you have checks done, you do a survey, and we would advise the same about recruiting a candidate. So if you're recruiting for a finance manager, for example, in your business, once you've conducted the initial interview and you've cross-referenced the job description with the skills on offer and gone through those sort of 3 emotional elements that I talked about earlier, maybe it's time for the second interview that you get your accountant in or somebody else from the finance department to come in. That gives you that spread sort of opinion on answers that are given. They may read into something differently that you did, or they may ask a question that you haven't asked. So I think personally, I would advise always to have more than one person doing the interview, regardless of the position. You know, you could be recruiting an administrator for your business, you could be recruiting a senior management team member. I think it's really important to get a cross-reference of people that are doing or conducting the interviews. Okay, so now we're in that phase where you're probably considering the second or third interview. And this typically for us is the soft skill side, the cultural fit of the candidate into your business. So, I mean, we hear lots of companies that are trying to tick boxes by meeting quotas. We want to, not interested in that. We have to focus our minds on getting the right person for the job, regardless of any other quota that might be in the picture. So this soft skills can be tested by inviting the candidate back in. They might have an opportunity to meet with the team. This is the time to also ask them about their understanding of the company culture, what your ethos is and what your goals are as a company, and get them to sort of talk to you a bit more about or understand from them whether they really do understand your culture, what kind of due diligence they've done themselves about your business, and what they can bring to the party themselves in terms of their experience in previous roles or other aspirations that they've got themselves. So I think this is a really good opportunity on that second and third to have less sort of structured questions, but more sort of relaxed style interview, asking those just soft skill questions about themselves and what they've learned about the business and what they know about your company and your ethos.